Welcome to Conversations in Marin. Today, Martin Rosen, former president of the Trust for Public Land, talks with Pierre Joske, the first general manager of the Marin County Open Space District.
Why did we ever have, Pierre, an open space district?
Well, it's kind of interesting. When I was hired in 1966, I was hired as a county park director. And we had a few parks that existed, but they were mostly parking lot with a piece of beach or something like that, except maybe for Paradise Park in Tiburon Peninsula, which had some lawn and restrooms and the like. But otherwise, there were small parcels scattered all over the place. In '66, when I got there, I, of course, took part in quite a few conversations. At one point, some people were becoming more urgent about open space as distinct from parks. And I had, eventually I had two ladies from the Marin Conservation League join me in my office. They wanted to talk about something. I didn't know what it was. And it seemed to me, which they didn't do that, but it seemed to me they were sitting on my desk telling me I should do something about open space. And I said, look, I have a budget for parks, and that's all I can do with that budget. So if we're going to add open space to this, we're going to need something much different and certainly some financing for it. Right. And so at that point, we discussed the matter with the commission and the Board of Supervisors, and County Council was asked to figure out what opportunities existed to create some kind of vehicle for the purchase of open space lands. We got Doug Maloney, the county council, involved and asked him what are the various vehicles we can use to raise money for an open space purchase. And what happened then was we had a series of 3 different ways of doing it. And Doug Maloney recommended using the same legislation that East Bay Regional Park District had. That was the only regional park district in the state of California. And that legislation was specific for them, and nobody else was allowed to participate in it. So we had to have special legislation introduced once the Board of Supervisors was convinced that we should do this. But actually before that, there was involvement of the public. There was a committee formed, Open Space, Park and Open Space.
Was that People for Parks and Open Space? Now what role did the People for Parks and Open Space play in the creation?
They sort of grew out of the idea that we need some open space, and they blossomed into quite a political force. They organized a meeting, an all-county meeting, at which everybody was involved, who was involved would be invited, and the public also, to discuss the possibility of creating an open space district. And this particular get-together was a huge success. Peter Baer spoke, and lots of people. And
Bill Bagley, the assemblyman.
Yes, we had lots of support there. And so that convinced the Board of Supervisors that we should follow through on this. And they authorized Doug Maloney to get the legislation needed in Sacramento. And once we had the legislation, we had to go for a bond issue.
That's right. Now then the ugly word of taxes came up. How did you deal with that?
Of course, we tested the water before we jumped in, and eventually we decided to go for it, and it was Proposition A, but it wasn't called Proposition. But
Measure A.
Measure A. Thank you very much, Marty. Measure A was very successful. We got 68%.
That's amazing.
We needed 66.6, and we got 68. So it panned out. What had been told us by the survey was correct, that we would pass that.
So what was your vision? You had all of these things that were enabling the legislation and the vote and so forth, but with your being the very first executive director, what was your vision? What were the intentions that you foresaw?
The intentions as I saw it, and not just myself, the commission was
Certainly.
intimately involved, and eventually the Board of Supervisors. But I must say, a little aside, the commission and I had a way of working with each other that was just marvelous. It was just such a pleasure because we could be open and discuss almost anything and come to some conclusion to get ahead. So this was great. But the commission and I worked out sort of a master plan. First of all, we decided that West Marin and Central Marin were pretty well protected from encroachment. We decided to concentrate on the eastern corridor. The thing to do in that area were two things: protect the ridges and the shoreline. Of course, you buy a piece of land or the easement for a piece of land where you can get it at a reasonable price. But generally speaking, we like to start from the top of the ridge and work our way down. On the shoreline, of course, we like some actual shoreline.
Yes.
But also marshes that were outside, away from the shore, because we still had those silly subdivisions like in Sausalito, with the streets and the lots were all in the water.
Yes.
And so people were trying to sell that to us.
Yes.
But of course we didn't buy them because why?
Yes.
We didn't need to.
But isn't it fair to say that not everybody was enthusiastic about what you're doing? Don't you tell the story once that when you were out looking at land, you ran into a couple of landowners and they all but ran you off the ground? What did they say to you? Do you remember that?
Pretty much, yes. This was in Bolinas.
Right, and what was happening in Bolinas?
I was there with the director of the Public Works Department.
Yes.
We were looking at the cliffs and the beaches below, and there was some discussion at the time about who owns the land between the cliffs and the high water line, high tide line. And so we were just standing there talking about this, and a lady came out, and she was like about 20 yards away, and her head appeared over the bushes, and after looking at us, she turned around and called her husband and said, "Come and chase those hippies away from here." So we were hippies. In West Marin, we weren't received too well at all.
I see.
But in East Marin, we had really a lot of support. You know, I went to quite a few conferences, park and recreation conferences, open space conferences, and I kept telling my colleagues, if you have to be a county park director, you better be the one in Marin County, because you do have support there.
That's wonderful.
And
you felt that?
Oh yes, the support
Wind
was,
in your sails.
The support was obvious, and I think it was a product of how we were able to work with the commission, and then the commission went to work with the residents,
right.
And brought back the opinions of other people, not just themselves. So with that in mind, we were able to develop quite a few important policies that panned out.